This is Tall Tale TV, your podcast for sci-fi and fantasy short stories. Of Tyrants and Teakettles by Lesley Herron. Chapter 6, Vernonia. Piper had always wanted to see the world, preferably from far above on a grand airship, drinking a glass of champagne and chatting it up with only the wealthiest of people in the realm, whom she would of course then pickpocket for good measure. She'd be surrounded by the glamorous and the divine. The deck would glimmer in the light of 1,000 flickering candles, the stores below filled to the brim with gold, and, of course, a string quartet serenading the lot of them throughout the night as they soared silently through the sky. Plummeting out of the air from a flaming pirate ship into a disgusting bog seemed to be as close as she was likely to get in this lifetime. Piper bit back on the sour feeling welling up in her chest as she tipped over her other boot, watching a blob of gunk slide free. It plopped noisily into the puddle of stagnant, muddy water, splattering her with yet more foul liquid. She set her shoe next to its pair and let out a hefty sigh as she gazed upwards. The sky was burning. Thick clouds of acidic rain dissolved into dark plumes of smoke and cinders, with ash falling like snow. Occasionally, a few pieces of debris would streak out of the sky, impacting the swamp with explosions of putrid water. In all directions, the smoldering husks of aircrafts and machinery added to the acrid haze. Bodies, mostly clad in red, peppered the landscape. And yet, what remained of the local armada above continued their patrol as if the clash with the pirate ship had never happened. Piper sat on a piece of shattered airship hull that rose above the muck like a small island, and regarded her unconscious companion with quiet curiosity. She bit at her lip. On one hand, he had saved her twice now, despite her attempts to sell him to, let's face it, pirates. Despite being rude, ill-tempered, and not exceptionally bright, he had put himself in harm's way for her, not something many people had ever done for her. On the other hand, those fancy augments of his would fetch one heck of a price. Piper was tapping her chin, still weighing her options when she noticed the cyborg stirring. Vel groaned, his eyes slowly blinking as he stared up at the sky. He was laying, sprawled on his back, in the middle of a stagnant and rather smelly mud pit. The pain he was feeling was all too familiar, something that seemed to follow him wherever he went. In the last year, he had been dropped off a building, thrown down a pyramid, and even crushed to death between the grip of a murderous god beast. In retrospect, this wasn't even all that bad, considering his track record.
Structural damage, 43%. Internal damage, 12%.
Luckily, Vel had an AI that was more than happy to report just how much pain he was in. He let out a long groan as he rolled over. His fingers sank deep into the squelchy mud, releasing a new harmony of smells.
It's about time you woke up.
Piper reached a hand down, offering the cyborg help out of the mud. Vel ignored the hand and slowly pushed himself to his feet. His neck gave a loud pop, and he felt the spasm travel all the way to his toes. He grimaced, staring down at Piper and giving her a once-over to see if she had sustained any serious damage.
"How long was I out?"
he asked, after noting that she had barely a scratch on her. Piper pulled her hand back, folding it over her other arm, and gave a slight shrug.
A couple of hours. I was really worried.
Vel rolled his eyes a little.
"Sure."
Piper bit back on her remark.
I'm hurt that you would even think so little of me.
It wasn't that he was wrong. It was just her money bag doing the majority of said worrying. Vel opened his mouth to respond, but instead of words coming out, a sizable glob of mud fell in. Piper smiled to herself as the big, bad cyborg was brought low by a bit of bog slime, hacking and sputtering as he tried to fish it out with fingers covered in yet more of the foul muck.
Oh, come on. It's not that bad. Full of vitamins and minerals, this stuff.
Vel gave her a flat look.
Funny. Where the hell are we?
Piper shrugged.
We're in the great green pastures of Avis. Can't you tell?
She scooped up a handful of mud and let it slide off her fingers, plopping back onto the ground.
Richest soil in 1,000 square miles.
Listen, if you're not going to help...
I'm being serious. That's where we are. Except that the Inquisitor went and let them tinkering bastards poison the air with all their machines.
She pointed up at the brown smog clouds above them.
Now the farmers are all moved beyond the borders, trying to grow crops in gravel.
Vel looked around. The barren landscape was dotted by the occasional run-down homestead. Long-forgotten fence posts poked out of the mud here and there, like vertebrae of dead sea monsters. The remains of farmland were scarred by the skeletons of once proud crops.
Makes getting a tomato sandwich a right trial, it does.
Vel rolled his eyes. Okay, so first things first. He needed some clean clothes, and maybe even a shower. He reached up to the collar of his coat to push his arms free from the sleeves, only to be starkly reminded that the sleeves were no longer attached, and his coat was in a worse state than he was. The seam that ran down the length of the back of his beloved red duster had split, and large portions of the leather had been ripped away, not to mention the combined smells of Scribner and the bog now permeated the garment. He turned around to glare in accusation down at the girl.
Do you know how long it took me to find this jacket? I had it custom made in a completely different world.
Oh no, I am just so sorry about your coat, Grandad. Next time I'm plummeting to my death, I'll ask permission first.
Piper snapped, rolling her eyes as she climbed atop the remains of a faded old wooden fence post. Maybe it wasn't too late to sell him. Vel sighed a little as he laid the remnants of his coat on the wooden fence next to Piper. He looked down to note that the rest of his clothing was in a similar state. He had a fist-sized hole in his shirt, and a seam in an unfortunate location had split in his jeans. Even his boots had been melted to an ugly mess of burnt rubber and singed leather. He shot another contemptuous glare at the girl.
Look, old man, I didn't have nothing to do with any of that, so quit pouting.
Piper began, her mood souring as she stared at the grouchy cyborg. She waved a hand at their surroundings and turned her face back to her companion.
If you insist on a new outfit, I'm sure you can find something off of these blokes. Not like they're going to be using it no more.
Vel looked around, disgusted. Now that he was paying attention to it, there were far more dead than he had assumed. Vel felt a pang of guilt somewhere in his gut. He certainly didn't intend for this level of damage. But, like most things in his life, nothing ever went as he planned it. He certainly wouldn't be stuck in some backward realm, fighting against pirates and soldiers for his life if it had. He sighed and turned back to Piper.
Don't you think that's a little disrespectful?
Piper shrugged.
Bloodcoats aren't exactly revered as pillars of the community, if you get my drift. Besides, it's either that or tromp all the way to Avis looking like one of Scribner's old wash rags.
You really don't care about anyone, do you?
Vel said with a sigh, snatching up the remains of his coat and turning his heel to stomp off. He checked to make sure the sneak thief hadn't pilfered his portal locker.
Well, this has been fun. Take care, kid.
Wait, where are you going?
Piper hopped down from her perch, grabbing the tail end of Vel's shirt to stop him.
Look, not that I didn't enjoy our death-defying skydive, but I'm done with you. Besides, going our separate ways is probably your best chance at staying alive.
Vel kept his back to her and pressed on through the muck.
You need me!
No, I don't.
Piper started jogging through the bog to keep pace.
You don't even know if you're going the right way. You could get lost out here, and then if the military doesn't pick you up, you'll starve. Survivability odds. Low.
Vel grumbled, waving a hand as he did to dismiss the on-screen information.
I'll take my chances.
Piper ran ahead of him, putting her hands out to stop him.
Look, I know you don't trust me.
Vel let out a bark of derisive laughter. Piper pulled a face and pushed on.
I know you don't trust me, and you have every right not to, and I'm really sorry for it all. But we're in the middle of nowhere, and if you head out alone, you're more than likely to end up dead. So you need me, as a guide of some sort, to get you to the city and to find a person who can help fix your broken whatchamacallit.
She pointed at one of the heavy corners of his coat.
Don't you want to get back to your family?
Vel stopped, that pang of guilt hitting him once again. She had a point. With her help, he did stand a better chance of getting back in a timely manner.
All right.
He dragged his mechanical hand down his face, as if everything about this went against his very being. He looked down at her in defeat.
All right. What's the plan?
Piper grinned.
Well, you're going to have to get some new clothes on, because we can't be marching into Avis Isle with you looking like you climbed out of some pig hole. They'd never even let us near the gate.
Piper looked around for the nearest body.
Here, try this.
She reached down and wrestled the coat off a nearby soldier, turning to offer it to him.
Yeah, that's not gonna fit.
Vel looked down at the soldier, who was roughly twice his size.
How about you sit over there and be good, and I'll find my own clothing.
He pointed back to the fence she had been sitting on previously.
Fine, just hurry it up, right? This place smells like a dockside latrine.
Piper tapped her feet impatiently against the broken hall she was sitting on.
Come on, Grandad! It's been half an hour already. It can't be that hard to find a pair of clothes that fit, can it?
She thrummed her fingers on her thighs in a vain attempt to stem off the boredom. The minutes had slowly ticked away, and the already low light seemed to be getting even darker.
I look like an idiot.
Vel pulled his mechanical arm through the sleeve of his 14th coat, finally finding one that fit properly. He had taken pains to find one that had not landed in the muck, and now looked like a rather dapper military grunt. He had even found a pair of white gloves that hid his cybernetic hand, and the fancy frill of the jacket covered enough of his neck to hide the metal plates. Vel had not felt right stealing the man's shirt, mostly because there was a large red stain on it. Instead, he opted to wear the red coat directly against his skin. The fabric was rough, but warm, and at the very least, it was dry.
Well, I can't argue with that, but mainly because all them soldiers look like fancy-pants idiots. Now, are we ready to go yet?
Almost.
Vel took a moment to remove all his belongings from his old duster and transfer them to his new ensemble, taking care to wrap the portal locker in some extra fabric to keep it dry from the mud. He left the dates, and after a moment of indecision, took the fistful of pearls and shoved them into a pocket. He turned to regard his traveling companion. That nagging voice in his head was warning him, shouting at him to be on guard. He knew she was likely to pull something, and would probably sell him the first chance she got when in the city. Since he was terrible at lying and making up stories on the spot, he decided to go along with her plan, at least until he could ditch her. As long as he knew she was up to something, he could be prepared. He took in a deep breath and said,
"Right. Which direction?"
Piper sprang to her feet and began walking in the direction Vel had originally been going. "This way."
"Oh, you have got to be kidding!"
Piper just grinned to herself. She still didn't know what she was planning, but at least now she had options.
"Keep up, Grandad. It's still a couple hours' walk before we get there."
Of Tyrants and Teakettles is Book 2 of the ongoing Sci-Fantasy series by author Lesley Herron. Join us as the adventure unfolds, with new chapters releasing every few weeks.
Oh, bollocks.
What's wrong?
You didn't happen to pick up me hat, did you?
No. Why would I?
Oh, bloody great. Now we have to go back.
Back? But we've been walking for over an hour.
Listen, we have to go back for it. I've had that hat since I was a kid. It's all I've got left of my childhood.
Oh, fine. We'll go back and get your stupid hat.
Oh, lighten up, old man. I'm just joshing you. I stole the hat off a stand about a week back. I just wanted to see if you would.
Huh. For a second there, you, reminded me of someone.
Is that a good thing?
No.